Attention! Choreo, a better way to connect with loved ones who are incarcerated. Without Choreo, family and friends wait for a call and hope they can answer. With Choreo, inmates can call or message at any time. When your inmate calls their Choreo number, they will hear your voice and text messages. Inmates receive and leave messages at any time using standard prison phones, making connection easy and predictable. For information about Choreo, visit choreo.org. Stay connected.
Welcome to the Prison Pod, a podcast for all people experiencing incarceration. The mission of this podcast is to save lives, restore hope, reduce suffering, and recidivism. Many show ideas come directly from the listeners, so please write the host. Prison Pod, Post Office Box 294, Orono, Maine, 04473. Here is your host, Ms. Valerie.
Well, hello, and welcome again to the Prison Pod. We are wrapping up season 4. We only have about 3 or 4 more recordings to do this season. And as I said, our last episode, when we were talking with Abby Rabinowitz from the Hinda Institute, that we were going to have Rabbi Scheinman this week. So I'm so excited to have the rabbi join us and to have a conversation about the Jewish beliefs and incarceration. Welcome, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your role is at the Hinda Institute as a rabbi?
Yes, I can. It's actually evolved, and over the years, right now I'm actually the lead director and fundraiser with multiple individuals that I'm responsible to oversee and make sure that there's enough in the payroll to keep everybody provided for. Whereas 45 years ago, I was a single individual doing all the work of the Hinda Institute as one individual. So to give an example, if we go back even 15 years ago, I was visiting 30 different institutions a month, all the way to the tip of Tams before it got closed, tip of right near Kentucky already, and Cook County Jail, Northern Illinois. I made sure to see each individual at least once a month. Now, this would take 70,000 miles of traveling each year. So you can imagine keeping vehicles was not that easy, especially not nonprofit vehicles, which are usually donations. And in addition to the visits, I would maintain contact with as many of those families that would want contact to comfort and counsel and have meetings with the parents and family members of those that I was visiting. And then when people got out, on top of that, staying in touch and helping them with jobs, reentry. So it was all a one individual operation. And of course, I had to find volunteers to help do some administrative work. And it did not take all that much. There were some contracts with the state, not a lot, but I don't need a lot to survive on. And I had to do a minimal amount of fundraising. And then that evolved about 15 years ago. My first wife, who this institute is named after, Hinda was not well. She was visited with breast cancer, which she battled for 7 years. And towards the end of that time, she said, I think you have to make sure your sons, are taken care of. They, 2 of my sons had just gotten married recently, and she was concerned, well, you didn't teach them any trades. What are they going to do? Who's going to hire them? And she basically said, listen, step up to the plate and you got to bring these boys on board. And I have it was at that time, I had another prison ministry rabbi in Pittsburgh, Rabbi Vogel, the Aleph Institute, which is national. They have a branch in Pittsburgh. So he said, Rabbi Scheinman, what you're doing is criminal. Get out of prison visits yourself. You need to expand what you're doing. I said, but how am I going to afford that? He said, well, just put on your big boy pants and you're going to have to go and fundraise and hire people. So with that, I employed two more chaplains, two of my sons, and I had to stop doing all the visits myself. I got a consultant to help me with, guide me along on how to fundraise. The last 2 years we are raising between $400,000 and $500,000 a year. We have, aside from myself, three other chaplains that are working either part-time or full-time, and obviously my wife has her whole team, which you spoke to her about, the education program, the caseworkers. So we've really built the organization, we've evolved it, and we are at the end of June, halfway through the year, we're going to be meeting with our board for our visions for the future, and we probably are going to have to up our ante once again and move into, get more money and to hire more people to continue this work. So as you can see, what I do has evolved over the years, but now it's less of the visits. I still go to 4 or 5 places a month just to keep my finger on the pulse. And but my main task now is growing the organization, figure out ways how to get us more well known, more publicity, speaking to groups, and finding new sources of funding, grants, and solicitations.
Yeah, I just love the work that you're doing there. And I want to talk a little bit about the Jewish beliefs in prison work. And one of the things that I had for a question was in Leviticus 19:18, there's love thy neighbor. How does that Jewish scripture influence your views on prison reform?
Well, right before that verse, it says, you shall not hate your neighbor. You should surely rebuke your brother. You should not have hatred in your heart. And then it goes on, it's coupled with loving your fellow as yourself. So the first thing is we cannot have hatred in our heart. We have to judge each individual favorably, meaning at the other hand, we surely must rebuke him. In other words, if there are improper behaviors, if somebody has gone in, when I go in to visit my clients, I have to explain to them they readily admit that they've made mistakes in life, that they've had greed or addiction or anger or different issues that brought them to do. So there has to be the rebuke. There has to be, understand that is those behaviors cannot continue. At the same time, I am going in realizing that they should not be labeled. A person should not have a lifetime label on them for the worst act that they may have done in their life. And to be labeled, I won't even use the labels because they're unnecessary. So that part that we're loving is that pure, unadulterated a part of the soul, which is like a diamond, which is shining. And what I find is that we want there to be, again, justice, but restorative, healing. We want the individuals to be able to change their lives and society to allow people to everybody deserves that second chance. Everybody has a chance. We all make mistakes. Every husband has been sent to the doghouse, to the proverbial doghouse by his wife. They do let him back in the house eventually. They are forgiven. Every child, one time or the other, is grounded in their room. They can't go out. They're grounded. But that doesn't stay forever. Their parents forgive them. They give them a second chance. People get on probations at work. They violate work rules, and sometimes they're on a probation or they're suspended, but they get a second chance. Their businesses go bust, but they could declare bankruptcy and start over again. They get a second chance. So somebody that has been sent to a and they are called correctional institutions by and large. That means the society understands that they should be corrected. They're there for correction. Once they're corrected, once they're treated, they should be reaccepted back into society, no longer carry those labels. They should fall away. They are returning citizens, and they've been impacted by the justice system, but they are able to come back and get a job, get a house, get an apartment. And these unfortunately, I don't know. So this is what the Torah mandates. It's interesting to note, if you go through the entire 5 books of Moses and the prophets, you will not find incarceration as a punishment. You'll find restitution as a punishment. You'll find corporal punishment, capital punishment, but nowhere is there incarceration. Incarceration is not seen as a humane way to deal with a person. We except for very, very exceptional cases, there is no need for incarceration. It's people on the very, very margins of society that are very dangerous that may have to be incarcerated. But by and large, people with addiction issues can go into treatment centers. People with mental health issues can be treated and regulated by doctors. And people with white-collar crimes can stay at home, work, and restitution, slowly pay off their debts. There doesn't have to be incarceration. It's definitely not something that is part of the Torah's view of crime and punishment.
How do we go about teaching others this? I mean, because as you know, a lot of people have that mentality of lock them up and throw away the key. And most people that go to prison are coming home, so that isn't the attitude to have. And, in my opinion, we are our brother's keeper. We are responsible for each other. We are all one people on this earth. And we are brothers and sisters, and we should be looking out for each other. But where do we change those attitudes from retribution to restoration?
Well, I don't think there is a simple answer to that question. I do think that it all starts by changing one person at a time. One-to-one conversations. Number one, it begins with the individuals themselves that are being visited to adapt that mindset and forgive themselves. One of the problems is some of the people that I know are out for decades and still have not forgiven themselves. And they're going around with a burden on their heart. You cannot heal if you have toxicity inside of yourself that you haven't forgiven yourself yet. God has forgiven you. Society has forgiven you. Forgive yourself. So it starts off with the individuals themselves, and society also. I guess the argument should be made that we have not 10, not thousands, not hundreds of thousands. We have millions of Americans that have. I think the figures are up to maybe it's 1 in 3 Americans have encountered the criminal justice system. We're talking about most of society. Big parts of society are affected by this, and to remove this whole large core of people from an economy and from a society is detrimental to the entire economy, and there's people that are doctors, lawyers, or we have very talented people, and they can no longer practice their what they want to do. And at the same time, when we have a lack of doctors, we have a lack of social workers, and we have people that are ready to go back to work, but society won't let them. Why is society hurting itself by keeping these people out? So I think arguments could be made that this is, and again, a society is only as strong as its weakest links. And if we're treating people in this denigrating manner and shutting them out, society, the entire society, this could be why we see a downfall happening in many areas in America because of attitudes like this. So I think an argument can be made, if we want to quote unquote, make America great again. It starts, if you have a lever, where do you put it? If you want to lift up the building, you put it all the way underneath, and then you lift. You can't put it in the middle. You'll tear the building apart. So we must go down to the lowest link, to the weakest link. We have to go to that area of society and lift up those individuals. If we lift up those individuals, if we forgive them, and if we allow them to re-enter, we are lifting the entire society. And that's really what will make America great again.
Wow, some great points there. I really like the idea of lifting the people up, because we don't do that. We don't welcome our people home. And I also like the idea that it seems to me that it's the community's responsibility, not a court system. Not to say that it doesn't go through the court system, but I think if we as a community took more responsibility to the harm that's been done to a lot of people before they end up involved in the justice system, we would have more empathy and understanding of those people.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that.
Is there anything in the Torah or the Talmud that talks about being responsible to people that are in prison, about going to visit them?
I don't know. What I will share with you is there are two different scenarios that are brought down in the Torah. One is someone who is inadvertently murders someone, and there are witnesses. They would have to flee to a city of refuge, and there were 6 cities of refuge set up originally, and it's written that in the future times another 3 will be established. In addition, the cities that the Levites lived in were also acceptable, and so these individuals would need to flee to these cities. They had taken a life, and in those days, it was the right of the one of the relatives to be a blood avenger. But if that person went to the city of refuge, they would be safe over there. Now, while they were in the cities of refuge, so we may want to call like a penal colony, just using modern terms, like Australia originally was a penal colony for England. Now, in these cities of refuge, a man would need to bring his wife and children there. And they wouldn't go there and be isolated. They were able to bring their wife and children. Not only that, if they had a mentor and a teacher, that teacher would need to either visit or go there and to be with that person. So although this person was being isolated from the rest of society, it was temporary. They had to stay there as long as the high priest, whoever the high priest was alive, they would be there. When the high priest passed away, all of those people in the city of refuge, they were able to go back to their regular homes. But while they were there, not isolated, together with their families, and even their mentors would have to visit them. So that would be one example of the Torah realizing that if somebody has to be isolated, it has to be with their family, it has to be with their mentor, they have to have somebody visiting them. They're not isolated and separate. They're only separated for certain aspects, but they have to be given a normal life while they're there. And the second example would be given. There was a certain disease back in the times of the biblical times where a person would see all different blotches or skin discolorations, and he would have to be examined by a priest, one of the Kohanim, of the Aaron's children, and if they determined that that person had this certain disease, they would have to go out all 3 camps in the desert. They would be again isolated outside the camps, outside the clouds of glory. But then this priest would need to go and visit that person to re-examine them and make sure and determine when they could return. And this again was a temporary measure. But again, you see that number one, the person that was involved in making that decision was the priest, and the priestly family were known to be for their kindness and their love in mankind. And if a person who's a peace-loving person finds that somebody's done something to the extent where they needed to be removed, you knew it was not done viciously or for revenge. It was something that needed to be done, and that's why such a person was mandated to be the one that made that declaration. In addition, that person would keep on visiting and going to see that individual to make sure that their behaviors would correct themselves and they'd be able to re-enter. Basically, it was a disease that came because somebody was a slanderer, was a gossiper, and was causing trouble in the community, dividing people because of their false rumors. Then, so God visited this disease where we'd have to be removed to understand what they were doing, separating people. But again, they were corrected, and once again, you see somebody from the priestly family, somebody from the community of high caliber would need to deal with that person to bring them back into the community. So I think those would be two examples, both the city of refuge and the when the person had to be removed because of the skin discolorations. Again, you had people, the Torah saying the mentor or the Kohen would have to be going out there and seeing that person till they return to society again.
I find the city of refuge really interesting because, as you know, part of the real problem with incarceration is the separation and division of family, and especially long-term incarceration. And there's such long distances for so many people to travel. So that idea of them having the family and a mentor, that shows that although they have made a mistake, they need that support and that emotional and physical family support to heal, to get better, and to be able to return. And what a different way of looking at that. I really like that. That's amazing. Um, that really gives me something to think about. I had never heard that.
Yeah, it's in the book of Numbers, and again in the book of Deuteronomy. You Google cities of refuge. You'll see it all.
I'm going to look at it now. That's great. Yeah. So I wonder if anything like that exists now, cities of refuge.
Well, I don't know. Maybe that would be like outpatient therapy for different addictions or different behaviors, where the person could be with their family but has to be in treatment, and they don't have that total separation. But again, imagine if somebody is found guilty of whatever they did, but it was either because of mental health or addiction issues, and they get treated, they stay with their family, they go for treatment, they could work a little so they could pay restitution and make it. I mean, that would be sort of like, getting close to a city of refuge. Is you do have to go for your treatment, you have to be out, but again, you still you get to sleep at home, you get to go to work, and but you're correcting your addiction, you're becoming regulated through mental health professionals, and you're paying restitution. You're not just isolated somewhere wasting away. That's the worst thing you could do. A human was put onto the world to be productive, to add to society. If a person makes a mistake, why can't they correct their mistake and stay in society and realize we're not saying the person is getting away with anything. We're treating them and we're making them responsible to make repayments and make good on the harm that they've done. So, that would be a much better system. House arrest is city of refuge type thinking. People that are on house arrest, they have to come to their court dates. They have to go. They have a parole agent. They have somebody monitors them. They cannot go wherever they want, but they're on home arrest. And I mean, a lot of cities, including Chicago, have changed the bonding requirements. And 15 years ago, I was seeing there were 10,000 people a day at Cook County Jail. Now it's half of that, only because they tweaked bonding and people being able to be out on bond or on home arrest. So the population, they've cut the population in half just by doing that. And those are people that are presumed innocent. We're talking about jails. People shouldn't have to be sitting in Rikers Island or Cook County Jail, thousands of people, and they're just waiting to go to court. And we know how long, unfortunately, how slow that system is. and how desperate somebody becomes because they're in a jail. They'll make a deal, they'll do anything to get out of there. Whereas if they are home and they're out on bond, they could properly fight their case, prove their innocence, and they're not pressured into making stupid deals. So I think home arrest and bond would fall under that umbrella of what we're talking about, city of refuge. You're keeping the person with their family. They're able to properly get legal representation, fight their case. They're able to then go into a treatment. They can get all the alternative sentences presented where a judge, instead of sending this person away, alternative sentences are city of refuge. Community time, treatment programs, and being certified, have experts come in and make sure the person actually clean and they take their drug test and they're staying sober. Those are all would fall under that category of city of refuge, I believe.
I think too some of the reduction in the county jails is medicated assisted therapies for people that are fighting with addictions. And, you know, a lot of people have the attitude that everyone just has to stop. We have to look at harm reduction. Harm reduction is just that, it's reducing the harm. And then hopefully it opens up those conversations where we can, you know, get to the point of the abstinence. But we need to meet the people where they're at. And I think that's one thing that we really need to start doing is opening our hearts and minds and looking at what the needs of the people are rather than just wanting to punish people.
Right. And as in the city of refuge and the person who was removed from the camps, there the element of a clergyman being involved in the therapy in and being maybe the very first person who is coming into that individual and telling him what a treasure they are, not what a bad boy, a bad girl they are, not that they're always in trouble in the principal's office or at they're always the one that the police are looking for, or they're always suspected and they're always being told how horrible they are and how terrible they are. I think they many people, at least I know from my experience, many of the men that I've seen, I think I might be the first person that's telling them that we have to strip it all the way down and get to your godly core, which is pure, which is unadulterated, and that's who you really are. That's who you really are. You're not your addictions. You're not your mental health problems. You are a pure individual that God Almighty decided to create, because there is nobody else that has something. You have something that nobody else has. So you have a talent to share with the world. You're here to improve the world. So get it together, buddy, because if you woke up, God decided He wants you alive today because there's something you contribute to the world. Me? Yes, you. you know, and it's sometimes that's important, together with all the harm reduction, abstinence, and regulation on mental health. People have to again forgive themselves, realize they're special, and take that special talent they have and channel it to the world and become a hero instead of a zero.
That's great. I love that. Now I'm going to switch gears and ask you a couple personal questions.
Okay.
First of all, is there a book that has made a real impression on you in your life? And it can go all the way back to childhood.
I cannot say there is, no.
Okay, good. That I'm surprised because a lot of people have some, but okay. And the other one is what is your favorite part of the work that you do?
The favorite part of the work is meeting the individuals in custody and bringing a smile to their face, making sure that they don't go, if all I do is go in and make them smile, that's the best part of the work. Like this month, our little joke and pun of the month is we tell them, there was a pirate who had the earring concession at the mall. He was piercing ears. And we asked him, how much do you charge? He says, $1 an ear. So just a little thing like that, to see somebody smile, break through the seriousness, and then, there's another part of you that could be accessed. seeing people smile, seeing them, put them at ease, reminding them that there's a God in the world, that the judge, the president, the Supreme Court, the warden, the CO, the parole agent do not control their lives. God does. And that if God doesn't want harm to befall you, it won't. You will not get beat up. Nothing never is going to happen. Connect to a higher source and know that God loves you and he will protect you. And so to just see people adapt that attitude. Last night I have a 90-minute Zoom with men that are unfortunately right now on a lifetime registry for different violations they've committed, and a very isolated group of people. And two or three people, one man's house was hit by a tornado. They had different things, but they said, "Yeah, but we remember Rabbi Scheinman taught us nothing happens to you; everything happens for you." You're never a victim. Everything that takes place, you have to be grateful and show gratitude that God allowed you to experience that issue, and it's for your good. It's happening to you. You're okay. God loves you. And just to see men then re-speaking that last night and validating that, yeah, it's changing their lives. Those attitudes are changing their lives. And the most gratifying thing is that to know that 9 out of the 10 individuals I see never return to a correctional institution again. And if we adapted this plan nationwide, we'd be closing down jails and prisons.
Isn't that the truth? Well, we've covered a lot of things today. Is there anything else that I might have left out? I do want to mention that the website, which is hindahelps.com, and Hinda is HINDA helps.com.
As my wife used to say to the receptionist, Hinda as in Linda, and then they would remember Hinda. Yes,
Is
I'd
there
like probably my present wife, Abigail. That again, I'm coming in with life experience of experiencing pain in life, losing a spouse, having to be a widower, having to remarry. This is all changes, and to have the ability to then use those experiences as lived life experiences to authentically be able to tell people, I understand we have different pain, we've gone through different things. I got it through this way, you could get through it also. And then, but probably my wife Abby did explain to you that there's 8 to 10 other people that are affected with every incarceration. Mothers, wives, children. It's an average of 8 to 10 people. So we have to remember this perpetuation of the criminal justice system, the way it presently is, where those 2 million some people, multiply that by 8. We're talking about millions and millions of people that are being affected by this whole system, impacted negatively. And the sooner we get. Do you know the story that happened in Texas? I went maybe 5 or 6 years ago to lobby. It was during President Trump's first term, and they were working on getting the First Step Back passed. So I went with somebody from the Olive Institute. I went with a former prosecutor who is now advocating for this, and we went to different state senators. We went to Senator Kirk at that time from Illinois. And one of the things that was brought is that the lesson from the state of Texas. The state of Texas decided to get smart on crime instead of tough on crime. And they started a program where they started identifying each individual they brought into custody, those that looked like they were ready to change their lives. They'd identify them, and then they would work on an exit strategy as soon as they entered. And they had counselors, they had teachers, they had a program to work that person to, and then they would have an exit strategy. They would follow through with them on the street and to make them successful. And by doing this, the state of Texas has cut the cost of their system dramatically, closed many prisons already. And so there's the front end of identifying people and making the whole stay more like the city of refuge model, where you have people, working on how to better the people, and then successful reentry, and then that's the back end is cutting the terms down, making different incentives to cut people's sentences down. In Illinois, they opened up a place, Kewanee, a reentry center, and you're eligible to get in there if you serve 20 years or more, but the last 10 years or whatever could cut down to maybe 2 or 3 years. And they have programs, and they have all types of job programs, incentives. Again, they do everything to get the people resituated back in society. They go out to work in factories around the prison. They go out to do real jobs, real work, and they have multiple years cut off of their sentence. And the recidivism rate is almost zero from that place. So this example from Texas or Kewanee, I mean, if we could replicate this, it's being done in certain places. So it just has to catch on, and it's proven to work. They should stop being pilot programs. They should become the normal program. And years and years of isolation and incarceration should be reserved if you'd have a pie chart, it would be like one little slice, maybe 1%. The rest of the people, we could do other models and just bring people in society, build society, stop harming 8 to 10 other people that aren't even done anything wrong.
That's why I love having conversations like this, because we learn so much from each other. And by having these conversations, it opens up for more conversations. And hopefully together, we can all change the way that mass incarceration is in this country.
Absolutely. Until we just close them down, there's no future in criminal justice. It's all in healing, restoration, and restoring relationships and healing the ills of society.
Isn't that the truth? Well, Rabbi Scheinman, we have been on here for about a half hour. I guess it's time we start closing things out. I'd like to thank you so much for joining me today on the Prison Pod. I know our listeners are going to love this conversation.
And it was a pleasure to be here. And again, if any of your listeners, you gave them the website, they can see what we do. And if they want to get involved in any way, we're looking for volunteers. We're looking for people that want to get involved in this work.
So remember that, folks. That's hindahelps.com. I will be back with about 3 more episodes to wrap up the season. And again, thank you so much, Rabbi Scheinman and the Hinda Institute for all that you do. And if you would just hold on for a moment as I stop, and then we will wrap things up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You have been listening to The Prison Pod, a podcast not just for those in prison but for anyone who has been affected by incarceration. Ms. Valerie would love for you to write to her with your questions, comments, and show ideas. The address is Prison Pod, Post Office Box 294, Orono, Maine. 04473.